Have you ever really thought about why Asia, a continent that's home to more than half of all people on Earth, is also home to some of the planet's most vast empty spaces? It's a huge contradiction, right? Well, today we're diving into how the continent's colossal geography, its giant mountains, its endless plains, its sprawling deserts, literally draws the map of where billions of people can and cannot live. So let's start this off with a puzzle. Imagine you're looking at Asia from space at night. You wouldn't see an even, steady glow of lights. Not at all. What you'd see are these brilliant, dazzling clusters of light, all huddled together, surrounded by these massive oceans of complete darkness. It's a world of light and shadow, and that stark contrast really makes you wonder, why? This is our core question for this whole explainer. Why is Asia's population so incredibly uneven? What is it that creates these dense, humming hubs of humanity, while leaving other absolutely massive regions almost entirely empty? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is literally etched into the land itself. To solve this puzzle, first we need to meet the main players in our story. And they're not people, they're the continent's enormous physical features. We're going to think of them as Asia's titans, these powerful, ancient forces of nature that really shape everything else that happens. The source material breaks these titans down into 5 main groups. You've got the super high mountains that act like giant walls. You've got the vast plateaus that are like the roof of the world. Then there are the wide open plains that became cradles for entire civilizations. You have the large, harsh deserts that just repel life. And finally, the long river systems that act like the continent's lifeblood. Every single one of them plays a huge part in our story. Let's kick things off with the first, and maybe the most impressive titan, the mountains. And look, these aren't just big piles of rock sitting there. They are active forces. They're like Earth's great walls, dividing up the continent and completely dictating the weather. And when I say great walls, I mean they are truly colossal. We're talking about massive ranges like the Karakoram and the Tian Shan. But the undisputed king of them all, the Himalayas, the highest mountain range on the entire planet. They are so big, their scale is so immense, that they literally create their own weather systems. It's incredible. Okay, next up, we have the plateaus. So if the mountains are the continent's giant walls, you can think of the plateaus as its enormous elevated floors. There's a reason they're often called the roof of the world. And the most famous example, of course, is the Tibetan Plateau. That nickname, the roof of the world, is not an exaggeration. It is the highest and largest plateau on Earth, and this vast high-altitude landscape has a profound impact on the climate of the entire region. Now for a complete change of scenery. We're coming down from those high, empty roofs to the low, fertile plains. These aren't just any old, flat areas of land. For thousands and thousands of years, these have been the absolute cradles of civilization. And right here, this is where we find the heartlands of the human population. Places like the Indo-Gangetic Plain in South Asia and the North China Plain, they're described as not just being incredibly fertile, but, and this is key, as being densely populated. This is where the story of the land and the story of people really become one. Okay, so we've met our titans. Now let's see how they actively, run the show. This is where we start connecting the dots and see this amazing cause and effect relationship between the land and the people who live on it. One of the most powerful ways they do this is through something called the rain-shadow effect. Okay, so imagine a huge mountain range, like the Himalayas, standing right in the path of clouds full of moisture. The mountains push those clouds way up high, forcing them to drop all their rain on one side. But what about the other side? Well, it gets almost nothing. It's left in a dry shadow. And this, as you can imagine, has a direct massive impact on farming. On one side of the mountains, in that dry shadow, you've got very little rain and extreme temperatures, which makes growing things really, really tough. But on the other side, down in the river plains that get all that water, the land is super fertile. It's just perfect for growing essential crops like rice and wheat. So here's the crucial point. This all translates directly to where people can actually live. The logic is simple, right? If you can't grow food, you can't support a big population. It's why the deserts and the high mountains have so few people. But the plains and the river valleys, with all that fertile land and all that water, well, that's exactly where you find those dense, bright clusters of humanity. All right, it is time for the big reveal. It's time to finally solve the puzzle. We've seen all the individual pieces, the titans of the land and the rules they enforce. Now, let's put it all together on the map and watch the complete picture just snap into focus. First, let's just picture the physical map of Asia. We'll place that great Himalayan wall stretching across South Asia. Right behind it, smack in the middle of Central Asia, sits the vast Tibetan Plateau. Then, up to the north, the Gobi Desert spreads out across China and Mongolia. And then, flowing through it all, you have these life-giving rivers like the Yangtze and the Indus. You got it? Okay, now let's overlay our human map, those clusters of light, right on top of that. And boom, the connection is it's perfect. It's undeniable. Those bright spots of humanity are clustered directly on top of the Indo-Gangetic and the North China Plains. And those vast, dark, empty spaces, they line up perfectly with the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, and the Gobi Desert. The puzzle is solved. The land writes the story of where people can thrive. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? I think it's about the incredible, enduring power of geography. These ancient landscapes cast a really, really long shadow, one that continues to shape the lives of billions of people, even in our high-tech world. If you need just one sentence to sum it all up, the source gives us this perfect, almost exam-ready takeaway. Asia's physical landscapes strongly influence its climate, farming activities, and where people live. It's a chain reaction that starts with the rock and the soil, and it ends with civilization itself. And that leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. For thousands of years, this geographic story has basically been set in stone. But as our technology allows us to overcome more and more natural barriers, to irrigate deserts, to build an extreme cold, are we on the verge of rewriting Asia's human map? Will these ancient landscapes always have the final say? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.